Hello, welcome to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Vaness Henry. I'm a 6'2" Ego Manifestor. And if you are not new here, welcome back. InSights has historically been my private podcast that I share with people who are learning how to study, read, interpret their variables with me. And I've been doing experimental things this season, trying to put more of my work out there publicly, spotlight people I'm talking to, and sometimes I have things I want to say on my own. Usually I do this with like Adobe Audition and there isn't like a visual component. And I have to say that really changes the flavor of like doing things. So I need to get my feet wet and do some InSights video podcasts that are just me. And so that's what this is. Welcome. I have camera 1 and I have camera 2 today. I don't know how it's going to go. Typically, I'm a camera 1 gal, but when I do some projects, I like to do a camera 2. So we don't know yet what we're doing. But as a 6 line, there's a trial and error component to what I do before I figure out if I like it. I came across something on Pinterest recently and it has shown up in my feed a couple times and I wanted to bring it to your attention and have a little bit wider, more spacious conversation about it. The graphic that I saw and continue to see makes me feel a way every time I see it is the art of observing and not absorbing. I think this is incredibly challenging, exceptionally challenging. And what are we actually talking about? So when we think about people who have these evolved tones in their design, if they are inner vision people, feeling people, or touch people, there is this aspect of relaxedness, receptivity, passivity that is deep within their body. And so they can't help but absorb things. As somebody who has a 6 tone in their environment variable, I can't help but lose myself sometimes in my experiences with the other. It's as if when I'm around someone, I can grasp and touch and hold the energy within a space. And the risk is that I can hang on to it. I can absolutely be self-absorbed. I can be absorbed in a subject. I could be absorbed in another person's story or experience. Some of us are just designed to get absorbed in the experience. So how do I, as somebody who's like this, build a practice where I'm able to better recognize and increase my capacity to recognize when I've lost my way, when I've lost myself, when I've become totally absorbed in another person's thoughts, feelings, words, experience, and I've lost myself in it. Now, even if some of us have some of the other tones, like a first, second, or third tone, whether we are smell, taste, or outer vision, cognition, or external sense, we might have totally open centers or undefined centers, especially an undefined solar plexus, where we're literally designed to be these containers, these holding containers, where when we come into interacting with people, we can't help but hold their emotional energy, or hold their splenic energy, or hold their sacral energy, or hold their mental energy. For example, I have a defined head and defined ajna, and my son is a totally open head. And I notice I can stress him out. I can psych him out. I come with a lot of mental pressure. Question, because that's the way my mental process works through information in order to deduce it and understand it. That's not the way he works, though. So when I'm around him doing my thing, I've literally put my thoughts into his head. And sometimes he can wonder about things that don't matter. He can get lost in the anxiety of things. And it's important for me to recognize as a parent, oh, he's absorbed my thoughts in that way. I also have a feeling cognition kid. This is a 5th tone. Feeling cognition people can really merge and blend energies with other people and feel as if things are happening to them when they're really just sharing it with others. A really expansive example of this, I always think of Octavia Butler's book, Parable of the Sower, where the main protagonist is somebody who is able to have hyper empathy. And she goes into these experiences where she's feeling what other people around her are feeling. And there's this powerful moment where a person in front of her gets shot and she also blacks out as well because she's feeling the experience, the impact that that person is going through. Of course, the only difference is she wasn't shot and she actually gets back up. I thought this was a profound example, even if it's from speculative fiction, because it points to a potential I think that human beings actually have as well. Human beings are so evolved, but we haven't increased our awareness to recognize how evolved we are. Though I do want to say I think this is changing. I think we are waking up to the fact that people have different abilities. Look at what we were learning with the telepathy tapes. I imagine these type of sensorial capacities that we all have within us are going to come online a little bit more So we're going to see that over the next 10, 20 years, especially as children are raised differently and we're becoming more aware. We're going to all start collectively honing our abilities more, and we all have unique abilities. But something I do want to say, I often take in psychics or people who are exploring metaphysical or esoteric types of things. And so many of them talk about like anyone can do this. Yes, anyone can be trained to do this. I challenge that. I wonder if that's actually true. Because according to my studies, if we all have these predetermined tones, we don't all have the same abilities that other people have. But if there are these 6 potential tones, and we could divide every person in the world to having one of these 6 tones, keeping in mind you have more than one tone, your body has 2 separate tones, an internal tone and an external tone. And if that's too complicated, just don't even worry about it. But in this case, we have a collection of abilities. So I shared with you, I'm a taste cognition person and I have an external sense of touch. So I will have taste abilities and also touch abilities. Sometimes people are double taste, double outer vision. Sometimes we're a mix of these things. But I'm not going to be able to have the same psychic abilities that someone with an inner vision tone has. Or I'm not going to be the same type of empathic channeler that somebody who has a feeling tone is going to have. Even though I'll have my own unique abilities, I don't know that all abilities are available to all people. They might be, I don't know. But based on the theories that I've been watching and observing, I actually think it's more specific than that. I think we each have specific abilities. All we have to do is recognize them and learn how to work with them and potentially develop them. We know in human design, it's crucial. Those first 7 years of life, we're very vulnerable to the conditioning of our families and environment and the way that we eat. And some of us stop developing because, well, we're always developing, but we stop developing where our heightened potential is because our needs aren't being met. You know, we're maybe not in an aligned environment. Maybe we're not eating the way we want to be eating. And we're children, so we don't have full autonomy and control yet to actually take charge of that point in our life. And oftentimes, in earlier generations, parents were not as aware either. You know, my parents did it, worked for me, it can be good for you. And that was kind of put down in these family generations and kind of creates these lines of trauma, these lines of behavior. When we're reaching a point now with what's really needed is to recognize the individuality in ourselves and also our other family members. This is what I really love about human design because it empowers me with information to not try and make my family members narcissistically like me. Oh, this works for me, so it's going to work for you. But to observe them in their uniqueness and in their differences and get excited about what we see there and excited about, there you are being you. I love to witness you just being you. When I gave birth to a feeling cognition kid, we knew his design his whole life. So we were very fortunate with that. And I knew having a feeling cognition little boy was going to create somebody who was very empathic and potentially emotional. There was going to be a different sensitivity. And he has proven to grow up into this very, very emotionally aware child who is often plugging into the people in his network. He's a 2-4. And as he plugs into these people, he really does know what they're feeling and what's going on with them, whether they vocalize it or not. Sometimes I can breathe differently and he knows what's going on with me. This was very confronting when I was a new parent, knowing that everything I was experiencing, my child was absorbing. What did I need to learn about him and myself to take better accountability for my own energy and to not be so unconsciously putting my shit on him? Because I'm going to be putting stuff on him anyway, stuff that I'm not aware of. So how can I work with the awareness I'm cultivating about myself and the awareness I'm cultivating about my other family members to simply give them permission to be who they are and to nurture that out of them? We often hear of these discussions on nature versus nurture. And I love this discussion from a human design lens, because when we look at each of our nature, there are certain things we're built with and equipped with. And when we zoom out and see the full spectrum potential of the design, we can see how conditioning, unhealthy conditioning, might impact our development and shut us down prematurely from developing and honing our powerful senses. So if we imagine and entertain an idea of living in a world where we are aware right from the gate of what our child's potential supernatural abilities are, that's natural abilities that have the potential to be nurtured and nourished in a way that really elevates their experience to another level, gives them these telepathic abilities or telekinetic abilities. That's for sure coming. Outer vision people, I think they'll be the ones who potentially do that in our future evolution. A prediction, I don't know if it's true, but I could see that would really, that could potentially develop there. But these people who have, touch cognition, they can reach out and just touch you and transfer so much energy to you without saying anything, just with a touch. Like, what a healing potential. A lot of healers have 6 tones. We see that a lot. Now, let's just take the example of like a Reiki practitioner, somebody who uses the art of touch, healing hands. You don't necessarily need to touch someone in order to give them Reiki. You could have a powerful sense of inner vision and see things going on with them. You could have a powerful sense of taste where you're picking up and sampling little things going on with their experience. So our different sensorial abilities and potentials could be utilized in a bunch of different ways. You could have any trade or craft in the world depending on your skill set. But what I wonder about is I don't know that it's fully accessible to all of us. I don't know that somebody who isn't a taste cognition person is going to have that charming, spell casting, vocal capacity, specialness about them that one of the other tones have. I actually think we could, in theory, measure what is special about each individual person. I don't think everyone could be psychic. I don't think everyone is empathic to the same degree as others. I don't think we're all charmers and spellcasters using our words. I don't think we're all visionaries. I don't think we're all able to break things down and see how it works or how it could come together or potentially be telekinetic. But I think some of us are. I think some of us do have those potentials. So when I watch these cool things that say like, yes, I can train anyone to do this, I don't know that that's absolutely true. I don't know if it's not true, but I haven't been sold. I haven't been fully sold. I wonder if everybody knew all the potential abilities we could have, if they would recognize that in themselves. And I wonder if we lived in a world, in an environment where we raised each other this way right from the gate, how would our sensorial system actually develop? So when it comes to the topic of learning the art of observing and not absorbing, what we're really talking about there is how do I separate myself from the experience without getting lost in it, while recognizing some of us are simply designed and made to be absorbed. This is not about changing who we are. This is not about putting up boundaries and limitations so that we never do that and we become a total hermit living in the mountains, never interacting with anyone. That's not sustainable. How can we appreciate and accept the abilities that come with this equipment that we've been given? And you might be someone who is simply designed to absorb the experience of the other. You can't turn that off. You can't change that from happening. You shouldn't feel bad about yourself that is an ability you have, although I can totally appreciate that sometimes it might be overwhelming. Sometimes it might overtake your system and it might feel like too much. It might feel like it's too hard. This is too much for one person to feel. I do think that's true. I do think you have the potential to absorb energy and it be a lot, especially when you're a witness to some horrible graphic things, or you are experiencing the suffering that other people are experiencing and you're becoming so engrossed and absorbed in it. I do think that is awful. I do think that is challenging. I also think that has the potential to be some of the most brilliant, compassionate parts of us. So what do we have to do? What do we have to become aware of in order to recognize our ability to get absorbed in the experience and then to disconnect from it and separate ourselves? First of all, we're going to have to practice. It's an art. It's not a science. It's an art. There's going to be a very special, unique way that you do it. You don't have to learn how to do this based on what I do or somebody else does, but really get brave with playing with your way of recognizing, I got totally absorbed in that story. I totally lost myself in that experience. I see this a lot when people go into the workplace. And when they go into the workplace, they just get caught up in the dynamics, in the politics, and then, they're in a job that they hate for 10 years. And what is that doing to our health? How much is that shortening our life expectancy and our lifespan if we spend a huge chunk of our time really miserable, really unhappy, constantly going to a place that doesn't feel good, that, instead of maybe relaxing, makes us clench up? May we recognize, may we learn. So I want to tell you a little bit about what I do in my practice in recognizing that I'm observing something and I have the potential to be absorbed by it and lose my way. I'm going to get swept away in an emotional experience. I can't help but feel what other people are feeling, and it can really take me out sometimes. I recently just had this experience where everybody I connected to that morning was crying. I connected to 3 separate friends, and each of them were having a separate experience, and they were upset by it. I wasn't particularly having a bad day. I wasn't particularly feeling emotional, but by the end of the day, I had a little bit of them, a little bit of them, a little bit of them, and it was all with me, and it created this heaviness. And so I recognized, I've got that heaviness, a little bit of that person's spirit stayed with me, a little sprinkle of that stayed with me, and I've got it, it's with me. We're together, I've got it. It's still in my body somewhere. So just that recognition that, okay, I might have picked up some things and they might have stayed with me. What type of practices do I want to participate in to help me let go of that, to help me push that out of my body? The first time I heard the phrase empty out, and it was from the projector community. I believe I heard it from Emily Kelly and Jess Fields. And there's a splenic projector and an emotional projector, and they were talking about developing a practice to let go of energy. And they were talking about it specifically for projectors, but I thought it really applied nicely to just the relationship dynamic we can have with energy in and of itself. And I love this idea that the projectors, I love this idea that those projectors came up with. I'm not sure if they were the original source for it, but they are where I heard about it first. And it inspired me to wonder, what could I do to let go of that energy, especially if I don't know how? As a non-sacral person, as a manifester, being physical and doing a hard workout was not attractive to me. No, thank you. I don't think so. No. Not all things work for all people. I have a heart condition. Pushing myself too hard past my limit can give me some heart issues. So there's a nervousness if I'm being too physical. But I did find just going and being in nature, going for a slow walk, meditating outside, sitting with the trees, there's a natural relationship with the land. And as I became a shamanic practitioner and started studying the shamanic arts, I developed practices and rituals through various teachers and guides to actually remove and dispel that energy I had absorbed and give it to a large body of water. I live in the Okanagan, and Okanagan Lake is near my home, and the lake spirit is called Ogopogo. It is a lake dragon, a water snake, and through my practice and relationship, if I was absorbing intense energy when I was doing some type of shamanic healing or simply connecting with my friends or my family members, there was a practice I could do where I imagined myself balling up their energy, kind of like if you're familiar with Tai Chi and there's these certain practices that you're wielding energy balls or you're gathering energy. Have you seen these airbenders on Instagram? These people who are like doing things and they're like moving, they're like controlling the wind. I think that's real. I think that's going to come online a lot. And I know there's people who are like, are they really doing that? Is it a trick of the camera? I suppose it's possible. Yeah. But just entertain the potential. Anyway, where was I? I lost my way. Sometimes that happens. Undefined G-center issues. Ooh, look at the sun. Ooh. Oh, look, she's half lit. She's half in the darkness. Ooh, I hope you can hear me. My mic is far. Anyway, through my shamanic practice, working with Ogopogo, the lake spirit of the Okanagan Lake, I was able to develop a practice where I was imagining myself ball up this energy and giving it to the lake spirit and imagining it traveling, throwing it like a basketball, traveling over to the lake, coming into being received by the lake spirit there like a big pearl, and pulling it down into the lake and letting the lake spirit feed on it, trust it, and then appreciating and thanking the lake spirit for helping me do that. Sometimes I notice I need to do that a few times to really expel that energy. Sometimes I need to go be in nature. A practice that works really, really well for me is singing. I have a background in singing, a background in music production. I'm a high sound ego manifestor with a taste cognition. So speaking and sounds, I'm very sensitive to. And singing was one of the greatest ways to clear my heart, clear my energy. And so that's a practice that really works for me. Might not work for everyone, but what is the practice that you do with your body, something physical, whether it's relaxing or activating, that makes you feel like you've dispelled something and it makes you feel clear? Depending on the types of things and types of energies and experiences that we've taken in, sometimes you need to do that practice repeatedly. Sometimes, some of us learn in concentrated ways, some of us learn in periodic ways, and some of us learn in cyclical ways. And for those of us who are cyclical learners, we go through a lot in the beginning, and it feels like a lot, and it gets easier and easier as we move through these cycles. So, for example, if you notice you're really absorbing a lot of energy or you're getting lost in other people's experience and you're wanting to develop this practice of observing, we first have to recognize when we're feeling overloaded. We first have to recognize, I don't feel good. There's a lot that's come into my system today. Maybe I did this, maybe I did that. Doesn't matter what it is. But I'm not feeling good. And could there be a place where I picked up too much of something? Not that we're placing blame on who we connected with, but sometimes you just witness something horrible in the news. Or sometimes you witness something horrible on the street. Or sometimes you hold a family member in their time of grief and suffering. And some of that, entertain the idea that some of that invisible energy stays with you. And so when you recognize something has stayed with you, one, I think you've increased your capacity for recognition. And so that's a sign of enhancing your awareness and literally becoming more intelligent. Intelligence is about building awareness. And once you've reached that place where you've built your awareness and you're able to recognize, this is maybe not mine, you're ready to then go into a practice that you can experiment with from time to time that helps you let go. Now or empty out, as the projectors say. You might have things coming to mind as you're listening to this. You might go, I really do this, or I like to do that. Let me know in the comments below what you like to do. Let me know what your favorite practices are. The reason I think that's valuable is because other people might be reading it and they might go, I would like to try that. It's not that it's your responsibility to tell other people what to do, but when you kind of innocently share what your experience is, other people might see themselves in that, and it might have this indirect way of really helping someone else just by you confessing what works for you or what you perhaps struggle with. Now, this is going to be a pretty radical thought, and it's not going to be digestible for everyone, but I still want to share it with you. As a child, I grew up in an environment with a sick parent. I had a parent who had cancer, and I spent a lot of time in the hospitals. And there were times where I remember looking at my parent when he was unwell and he was losing his mind, and I just couldn't understand what he was going through. And I remember fixating and being like, I want to know what you're feeling. I don't understand how you could just forget to get dressed or forget who I am, as his cancer was sort of eroding and eating his mind. And I remember really fixating on that, becoming very absorbed in that experience. That parent passed away and obviously left a huge imprint of trauma that I see now I maybe didn't know how to handle or digest. Even though I had a lot of support around me, it was still a traumatic experience. I was still somebody who was an absorber. And I find it very curious that a few years later, I got cancer. Our cancers were completely unrelated. My parent had skin cancer. I had lymphoma. So I had a blood cancer. He had a skin cancer. They're not related. They were not in the family. We were the first to kind of have these cancers. And it's just peculiar that it happened in the same household. And I did spend a lot of time wondering, what did I get absorbed by in that experience? There's no way to prove or tell for sure, but it just opened up the potential of, are we perhaps way more evolved than we realize? Do we have abilities that we don't fully understand? And I actually think our science is catching up with this. I think if you go to scientific and spiritual communities, they're essentially saying and looking at the same thing. They're just coming from different perspectives and therefore providing different perspective. When we study variables in human design and we learn about the perspective variable, the worldview variable, you could say, we see that people see things differently, and that's correct for them. That's healthy. It would be so boring and bland if we all saw everything the same way. Blech. But from my experience, it made me wonder, what do I not know? What's necessary for me to learn about my own body and its potentials? Oh my God, I'm becoming so illuminated. That's going to be a little bit too sunny. It's blowing me out though here. It's becoming a little bit too sunny. So I'm going to wrap this up a little bit. When you're experimenting with the art of observing and not absorbing, learning your senses in the human design body graph can be very helpful because you start to pay attention to the signs that your body emits when something is good for it or not so good for it. And as you start to recognize those signs that are already happening in your body, all that we have to do is train your awareness to recognize it. It gives you the opportunity to pause and recognize, I'm too swept up in this. I'm too absorbed in this. I can't turn that off. That's simply how I am. I am made that way and I love the way I'm made. So what do I need to know about myself to take care of myself, to protect myself, to deeply respect myself and what abilities come with this equipment that I'm having a ride with? What do I need to know? What do I need to know about being a human? And it's okay if we don't know that. It's okay if we're just learning that. I actually think with the rise of AI and artificial intelligence, we're going to really learn what it means to be human. We're going to really get on side really quick, or just entertain the idea that aliens come to our planet. And we're fighting about race and gender. There's a whole other species coming. In this scenario, we need to get on side. We need to get on side as humanity and as a species. It doesn't matter the differences in us. That's what makes us special. We shouldn't try and carbon copy ourselves and this works for me, so it's going to work for you. That's how my parents did it. That's just, there's a wider abuse of power going on there. And the way we can take our power back as individuals is recognizing our differences and actually celebrating them. And that happens right with our children, of recognizing our children are not us. Like, I remember being so shocked. This is going to sound so silly, but I remember being surprised that my child liked the color blue and I liked the color red. I know that doesn't make sense, but it was like that first moment of like, oh yeah, this is a totally individual person developing their own preferences, their own tastes, their own abilities. And my responsibility as a parent is to simply watch that, observe that, and nurture their nature. What would happen if all of our natures were nurtured? I grew up with a parent who had an undefined heart, and she said that she was very discouraged throughout her life. And from the stories that she tells about, a woman who is coming of age in her prime in the 90s, who was born in the late 50s and, maybe didn't have parents that were always very supportive. What would have happened to her had she been in a highly encouraged environment? And she had a little bit of grief talking about that, saying like, I do wonder who I would have became had I just been encouraged. I thought that was devastating. As an ego manifestor, encouragement is a huge part of my experience. I can get a lot of energy from the right kind of encouragement. And the thought of my parent, my creator, being discouraged throughout her life is devastating to me. And to think that she has to imagine what her experience might be like had she been encouraged, it's also devastating to me. It's something that I could get totally absorbed by and swept away. So the practice is zooming out on that and having compassion for the parent, having compassion for her as my creator, but also not losing myself in the story. I think that when we develop these practices that work for us as individuals and not forcing each other to do what doesn't work, we can enter all new states of compassion and all new places of acceptance among each other. I think that would be a very beautiful place to live in. So when you recognize, when you give something to your child and they take it and it really works for them, great. But sometimes it's like not working. It can be just as fun to brainstorm, this is a feeling cognition kid. What might work for someone like that? Because this is not a taste cognition kid like me. Oh my God, and my husband is touch cognition. These are all different. These people are all going to have different experiences, different sensorial capacities, different opportunities. May we recognize the brilliance in each other rather than parroting what works for us onto other people. But as I've said before, when you comment below and you say what works for you, it's not that you're putting that on someone else. You're kind of confessing it innocently, and then other people can pick it up and experiment with whether it works for them. So I shared with you being with nature is one of my favorite ways. Singing is another favorite way. I also do like Tai Chi or stretching or dance. I like these kind of slower movements to help me move things through the body. But another way to help me burn through the mental energy would be journaling. or speaking, talking to a therapist, talking to a friend without emotionally dumping on the friend, or journaling out all those inner thoughts and things that you're experiencing or that are caught swimming around your brain, getting it out of the system. Just like my practice in the shamanic arts of imagining that energy and giving it to a powerful land source or powerful landmark. There are all kinds of ways that we can experiment with getting that energy out of our body. What I hope the takeaway is you can't help but absorb sometimes. So learning the art of observing is a very gracious, self-respecting way to increase your capacity to recognize and to increase your capacity to develop your awareness. And it starts with yourself. It starts with recognizing your own symptoms, recognizing the way you feel. And for some of us, people who are transpersonal, people who are, fourth line, fifth line, sixth line consciously in their design, whether that's like a 6-2 profile, 6-3 profile, 5-1 profile, 5-2 profile, 4-1 profile, these ones, 4-6 profile, don't want to forget anybody. Part of your experience is learning through the other. And so in order to actually learn about yourself, sometimes you do need to observe other people. Sometimes it's easier because your eyes are in your head looking out at the world. They're not looking in at yourself. It's easier to recognize what works for your loved one. It's easier to recognize what works for your friend, or it's easy to see what's not working for them depending on how you're made. And through that observation of observing others, it can give you the framework and capacity to self-inquire. So no matter how you're made, whether you're really connected to what's going on with you or whether you're able to really recognize what's going on with other people, that's your learning ground. And once you know what your learning ground is, you can start experimenting and playing with new things that work for you. There is no rule book. There's so much information out there that doesn't all apply to you. Not everything is for you. Your responsibility is to attune your awareness so you can recognize how to filter through all the information and pluck out the things that apply to you and work for you, or pluck out and apply the things that work for your children or their loved ones or those that you're caring for. Thank you for sitting in the sun with me and watching the light change. Very fun for this Shores gal. Let me know if you liked this format. InSights are typically interviews with modern mystics, but I do want to experiment with sometimes when an idea comes or something I'm musing on, I would love to have a place to get it out of my system and spill it somewhere. So let me know if this was entertaining for you. Let me know if you practice any of these things that I've said, or if you have anything cool to add. As I said before, it can really help a wider community. It's not that you're telling anyone what to do, but you're giving examples that they could try and experiment with for themselves. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I've learned that if you don't say that, it really has like a 50% effect on your numbers. So shocking. Who knew? I'm learning so much as I try to post regularly on Instagram. And if you're wondering why I'm doing on Instagram, oh my God, on YouTube. If you're wondering why I'm doing that, it's because I have pulled myself away from some of the social channels that I've been on in the past. I had an Instagram presence, I had a Threads presence, and I decided to delete those. I deleted Facebook, I deleted Instagram, I deleted Threads, and I decided to pour my energy more into YouTube because it felt like that was a more slower paced creative outlet. Sometimes I would read celebrity variables on Instagram and stories, and I'd have like a minute to do it. And while that challenge was kind of fun, I wasn't able to go to the depths that I wanted to go. And so I wanted to start experimenting with slowing everything down so I could get a little bit more relaxed in my body and making slower, longer content for you, which is what I do here. And I'm experimenting with this season. You can expect this every Wednesday to drop something new. And I'm going to be experimenting with that for as long as it feels good. I've kind of committed to trying that for a season. Then I might zoom out and evaluate because you know that we love doing that here. But if you got something out of this, please let me know below. Thanks for listening to my latest insight. It's much harder to do. On video. It's just like harder. When I'm doing it just audio, I can just like stop and I can talk and I can like be like, "Mwah, mwah, mwah, mwah." But when it's a video, it's just a little bit trickier, Anyway, see you next time. Let's see if this worked.